Welcome back to 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Fry, and today I'm joined by Nita Sweeney, an award-winning author and ultra-marathoner who battled depression for years before finding a breakthrough through running, mindfulness, and persistence. Her story isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, starting late, and completely rewriting what's possible. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, Nita, thank you so much for joining me today on 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm very happy to have you here. Now, for those in our audience who may not be familiar with you, could you share a little bit about yourself? Like, who is Nita Sweeney and what are you all about?
Primarily, it's a great question. Thank you. Primarily, I am an author, but I also coach people. And the main thing that I work with is people who have emotional challenges, and we use tools like meditation, exercise, so call it movement, if you will, and then also writing as ways to break free from blocks or meet challenges, or some people get lost and they need to find their way, and that's what I help them with. And I primarily work with writers and lawyers and runners, but I've worked with artists and other leaders and other creatives, other athletes over the years.
All right. So I understand that you weren't always this way. You weren't always ultra marathoner and into meditation and all this. So what got you into this to begin with?
Well, the meditation piece, I always say I met a guy. That's actually the truth. I was dating a gentleman who I really liked a lot, and we were sitting in my dining room one day, and he said, "Do you want to sit?" And I said, "Do I want to what?" Because I had no idea what he was talking about. And what he meant was, "Do you want to meditate?" And he set the microwave timer for 5 minutes, and we sat, and I fidgeted. His instruction was to try not to fidget, which I found impossible. And gradually, over time, as we continued dating, I learned more about him, more about meditation. I realized that it was a tool for more than, you hear about enlightenment, but it was really a tool for living. The skills that you learn by sitting still and noticing your breath or noticing body sensations transferred into everything else in my life. And that's been a long time ago. That's been about 30 years ago. The running was more recent. That's been, I think, 15 years ago. And I've had mental health challenges my whole life. I have been diagnosed as chronically depressed, bipolar. I have some borderline tendencies. So I have these things that have always been with me, and I've always been looking for tools. So the meditation really, really helped. I also see a therapist, and I'm on medication, just so you know. I do the whole thing. But I wasn't physically active. And then I think I was 48, and a friend of mine posted on social media, "Call me crazy, but this running is getting to be fun." And she had started an interval training plan. Never heard of such a thing. And I watched her because I really didn't think that the words fun and run belonged in the same sentence, actually. I thought that was kind of nuts. We should do a wellness check on her. And but she was having fun, and I was not. I had gone through another cycle of very serious, suicidal ideation and very serious depression. And so I thought, well, that's one thing I haven't tried. In the same way that meditation stuck with me, pretty quickly. When I started jogging around the neighborhood with my dog as a decoy, I leashed up the dog and I went down into this hidden ravine. I've written about it in one of my books. Depression Hates a Moving Target is the title of the book. And I was so afraid of people laughing at me because of how old I was. I was a much larger person at the time. And, I thought they would think this middle-aged large lady has no business running. And so I went down to this hidden ravine and we jogged, and I didn't die. And eventually I had increased stamina, increased focus, and I started having the side effects of that you get when you're on too much medication. And so they reduced my meds. Now I just take a tiny dose of medication. And that's been an amazing thing. And I never do anything halfway, so I went from running around the block to running ultramarathons. It took a while, but I just got back from a trip. We flew to Atlanta, and then rented a car and drove. I live in Central Ohio, so we flew to Atlanta and then we drove back to Ohio. But on the way, I did 3 half marathons in 3 states, and we also went to Dollywood. So I've been, I stay pretty physically active for someone who is over 60.
That's very impressive. So let's talk about depression for a little bit. Because I know, I mean, like, what's the percentage of people in America who are depressed? Do you know? I mean, like, it's got to
Oh,
be 30 or
yeah,
40%.
well, I think it's 10% that are actually diagnosed, but I think it's much higher than that. Yeah, I think it's much, much higher. It's millions of people. I know that. And I used to know those stats. I should have looked those up again because I'm sure that it has changed. Since the pandemic, it has definitely increased. The people that identify themselves as having a depression has increased a lot. I don't want to cite statistics because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but yeah, a lot.
Well, they say that, like, I forget what they say.
Epidemic.
They say like 30% of people have like a mental health disorder of some kind, right?
Right.
I think it's probably 60 to 70% or 80 or 90. I mean, like in my work, I'm a realtor, and like in my work, like the number of people that I encounter who I think like you guys, like you need a little tweak somewhere with your mental health is staggeringly high. But depression in particular. So, what are, I mean, you're not a psychologist, and I know that, but like, what are some of the typical causes of depression, or do you know the cause of your depression?
Well, I think mine is both nature and nurture. Both of my parents suffered from depressive episodes. My mother was probably bipolar, although she was diagnosed as depressed. And many members of my family have had mental health challenges. We've had suicides on both sides of my family. And so I think I was probably born with a predisposition toward that. And then various life circumstances, an environment in which that thrived. Growing up with a father who was it was like loving and critical at the same time, which always seems weird, but that's really how I felt about him. And a mother who was not really emotionally available, was very eccentric and kind of off in her own world a lot of the time. And and then just me, I was also much younger than my brother and sister, so kind of grew up alone on a 50-acre farm. But it just, I think you are predisposed to it sometimes, and then life happens and you can have situational things. And my choice of career, I chose to be, I really wanted to write, but I didn't think I could make a living at it, so I became a lawyer. And I was able to write and make a good living at it for a while. But I didn't treat my mental health issues. And as a result, I just, crashed and burned big time after 10 years. And I think that it was just that combination. So sometimes when I'm coaching people, what they'll be going through is a temporary thing, a situational thing, where they weren't depressed before, and then life happens. They have a death, or can be like a loss of a job. It can be, you can have grief over a lot of different things. And they don't have the tools to deal with that. And as a result, their emotional state just plummets. And we work through that, and then sometimes I refer them out to mental health professionals, because I'm not a therapist at all, and I can't, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, but sometimes they need life tools that help, and then they can come out the other side of that. So yeah, so I just think for me, it's a little bit of both. And for the people that I've been coaching, sometimes it is both, and in that case I'm going to send them to someone who's professionally trained in mental health diagnosis and the possible prescription of drugs, things like that, if that's what they need. But sometimes people just have a situational thing where life just arises, and something happens and they don't have the tools to deal with it, and they often maybe think that there's something wrong with them as a result of it, but it's just that they're not skilled in that area. And when we can people can learn. Our brains are plastic; they can change and grow, and so I offer tools, and often that helps. That I think that answered your question. Yeah.
Yes,
Both.
it did. Okay, so I want to talk about some of those tools in a minute, but well, maybe I'll talk about it right now. So, like, one of my like I know that like when I'm feeling down, like I don't think like I'm clinically depressed or any of that really, but I think that we all from time to time just get like overwhelmed or bogged down by like the weight, the enormity of everything that's going on, like the struggles of daily life and all that. And, I felt like sometimes less elated than at other times. And I have found that for me, two of the things that really help with that are sleep and exercise specifically. So my feeling is based on my own experience is that a lot of people who are not clinically depressed, right, who are just, like maybe are suffering from an extended period of, lack of ebullience in life or whatever you want to call it, it really comes down to like sleep and exercise. What's your thought about the exercise component? Because you're like kind of like an exercise guru at this point, I think.
Yeah, the exercise was a huge missing piece for me because I had suffered from clinically, diagnosed, hospitalized depression and mental illness for decades. And when I added just breaking a sweat on a regular basis, 3 times a week, I mean, it doesn't even have to be anything that intense. Intensity helps, but it was amazing. Sleep also, I would echo that. Some of the meds I was on made it very difficult for me to sleep, or I would be groggy all the time, but never really able to deep sleep. And so, sleep hygiene, learning how to, make sure that I'm not looking at screens in the last hour before I try to go to bed. Don't have caffeine after a certain, for me, it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I can't have anything after that. And watching my diet, not necessarily to lose weight, but if you're going to have that chocolate treat, don't have it at 8 p.m. Because the sugar and that little bit of caffeine can mess with sleep. So that the combination of those two things has really made a change for me. And I find that if I exercise earlier in the day, that helps as well. There's some studies that you need to have your body temperature, like naturally, your body temperature drops when you sleep, and that helps you go into a deeper sleep. But if you exercise too late in the day, your body temperature will stay a little higher and it won't drop as deep. So timing of all that has been important to me. And if this sounds really complicated, don't freak out about it being, oh, I have to do this and that at this times. No, if you're not doing anything, your baseline is just to do something. If you're not getting enough sleep, just try to get another 15 minutes in. I'm also a big proponent of making your goals so small that you can't fail. Make them so tiny that you will absolutely achieve them. Because you and I can tell already that we could go into the weeds on this pretty far because we have a lot in common in terms of our beliefs and what has worked for us. But yeah, just the simple act of making sure you get good sleep. A dark room is really important. Blackout curtains, or at least just have the shades closed, or an eye shade, things like that, because it's just the tiniest tweaks sometimes make such a huge difference. But yeah, I really went from being a very large person, couch potato person who wasn't active physically at all, to someone who now runs ridiculous, and I walk too. I do run, um, ridiculous distances for fun. It really changed my life. Because the other thing that happened, which you didn't ask this question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. The other thing that happened was I had been trying to finish a book from basically 1996 until 2016. I had tried to get published, to write. I'd written a few articles, but to really get a book-length project published by a traditional publisher. And I didn't have the stamina. And when I started exercising on a regular basis, the stamina very slowly built, and I was able to finish it and do the things you have to do to get a book published. And so it's amazing how the exercise, which you think about physical health, turned out to be like my wildest dreams coming true also. So you just don't ever know.
Right. You just don't ever know. And yeah, I personally think that it is easy to feel like depressed. Like I have some chronic pain issues and they're very minor overall, but like when it was 10 years ago, I have these herniated discs in my neck and like I had a major problem with them like 10 years ago, and it's been much better since. But during that episode, which lasted about 6 months, right, that was probably like the most depressed I've ever been. Just like when your body is not feeling good, it really just it leads to depression. And I just love what you said right there. Make a goal so small you can't fail, and I think that's really important because like a lot of people say like, well, how do I get motivated? Okay, so I'm a couch potato. Like, how do I get motivated to like like get off the couch and like do something, like anything. And the thing is that motivation actually comes from progress, right? You can't get motivated first and then do progress. You actually have to, when you're not motivated, you have to just take that step, right? And so like making a goal, I love that. Make a goal so small that you can't fail, because then you will see that you've had some sex. You will see that you've had some success when you actually do accomplish a goal, any goal, at least it was so small. And then you just said a couple of things about exercising. Intensity helps, and that you should break a sweat. Well, that's very interesting to me because like a lot of times, like I hear people say like, well, like just move a little bit, right? Just go for a walk. Well, when most people walk, they don't break into a sweat. So why did you say that intensity helps and that you should break a sweat? Because a lot of times I hear that that's not even that important.
Yeah, so for me, that's what the difference was when I would do it, and it doesn't have to be fast, because long, well, you'll break a sweat. You can either do it like intensely or long, and either way, you'll probably break a sweat. But that was the difference for me. And I'm not talking about, the kind of sweat that you actually feel after you run a lot or whatever, but just that feeling of warming the body. And so maybe break a sweat is too much for somebody, but that was the difference for me when I noticed that I came back breathing hard and enough that my body had warmed up, that I could just sort of feel myself sweating more than I usually do. Then I could feel that kick of kind of the happy brain chemicals that I wasn't getting. So that's kind of why I said that. But I still think that anything is better than nothing. So that's why I say about the goal being so tiny, because we get so up in our heads. And I love what you said. I don't know exactly how you said it, but it's like we have to generate energy when we don't have energy. And it seems like a conflict, or it seems contradictory, because I'm depressed. I can't move. I can't, I feel like there's lead in my veins. I feel like somebody has tied sandbags to my shoulders. How could I move? But if you get moving, then some of that will dissipate. It won't immediately go away. It's not magic, but it will dissipate. And there's actually, I'm in the recovery community, and there's a phrase that they say there. Bring the body and the mind will follow. And that's been my experience with movement as well. That I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. And then I start doing it and realize, oh, crap, it worked again. It's almost like I don't, when I'm so depressed, I don't want it to work because I just want to sit still. So yeah, the intensity, that came later for me. I just had to get moving first. That was the most important thing, is that first step. And sometimes I do, I call it house jogging, where I will still get, even with all of this, all these tools, I still have chronic depression. And there are days I wake up and I just cannot face going outside. But I know that I'll feel better if I move. And so our house, we live in a ranch house, and it's kind of has a loop that I can go around. And in my pajamas, I will just start walking, and then maybe throw a little jog step or two in there once in a while. And then pretty soon I'll start feeling well enough to change into actual, workout clothes. And then I'll do another few laps, and then I'll think, I could go outside. I'll just go outside, see what happens, put my shoes on. And I mean, I've had days where there were 5 miles on the schedule, and I literally started the 5 miles in my pajamas in the living room because I had to make the goals so small. And this is somebody who is after three ultras, three full marathons, and I think I just did my 42nd half marathon in 29 states or something like that. And there are just still days. But now I know, I can't lie to myself anymore. If you get moving, you'll feel better. You will. You don't want to do it, but you'll feel better.
Well, yeah, I mean, like when people go to the gym, it's like I gotta drag my ass to the gym again, right? And like you're not looking forward to it, but when they get off that, exercise machine or whatever, you always feel a lot better. What is
Weights.
serotonin, or I don't know what it is, but like you always feel better.
Endocannabinoids. Endocannabinoids. Really. That's what it is.
Endo what?
Cannabinoids. The stuff
Is that like
that's in
cannabis?
marijuana.
Is that really
Yes,
like
it's
that? Is that like natural to your system?
Yes, yes. We always hear about endorphins, which is part of it. Serotonin, dopamine hits, all that's part of it. But that was the piece that I hadn't heard of, and I did a little research on that. And endocannabinoids. So that's why you get that kind of high feeling, that little blissy feeling. The body will naturally produce it.
Interesting.
That
Well, I'm
was,
going to have to
yeah.
look that one up. In California, we're
Look
all
it up.
about cannabinoids or whatever.
Yeah, cannabinoids. Yeah.
Cannabinoid, right. Say that 3 times fast, okay? All right.
Yeah, it's
So,
okay.
so maybe people who are out there, because like I mean, there's just so many Americans, especially older Americans, who are like, they feel tired. They're, they're rooted in their couches, right? We have a very sedentary lifestyle. Maybe don't worry about breaking a sweat. Maybe just worry about just actually having some kind of movement, and let's just call it a sustained elevated heart rate, right, for some period of time to begin to get those benefits. And then maybe at some point, like look at, actually breaking a sweat, right? But just make a goal so
Yeah.
small that you can't possibly fail. Just get some positive forward momentum, and that might help you break out of whatever is going on with you. But you said tools to deal with depression. And so let's talk about some of those tools beyond exercise. We just talked about exercise, which actually I think, I'm no expert, not at all, but I do think that movement is certainly one of those tools. What other tools, well, you mentioned medication, but what other tools besides exercise and medication are out there to deal with depression?
Well, meditation actually is a tool for me because the type of meditation that I practice is mindfulness or insight, they call it. And in it, you focus your attention on thoughts and body sensations. And you can see in real time how pushing and pulling on your experience, your thoughts and body sensations, can cause suffering. And so let's say I am glued to the sofa and I feel like there are lead weights, on my shoulders and heaviness, lead, whatever, in my veins. If can sit still and notice what those sensations actually are, as opposed to the story I may be making up in my head about what they are, there is a tiny bit of relief from that. And often we'll realize that, yes, it's difficult, yes, it's unpleasant, yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's not horrific, which is what the brain will tell us sometimes. And so the meditation practice has actually been really helpful for me to be with the depression when I can't change it, because there are times when I can't change it, when it actually just exists and it will pass. And that's the other thing you see in meditation is you see the rising and falling of a sensation or the rising and falling of a thought. And the noticing of that sense of impermanence, that it's much more like a wave than a solid thing. We sort of imagine it as this blanket that's sort of covering us permanently or with solidity. when in fact it's moving and changing all the time. And there's some relief that comes from noticing the rising and falling, the ebb and flow of it. So the meditation practice for me has been helpful. The other thing it does is it counters the lack of focus that depression often brings with it. Uh, and then also, what's interesting, kind of the flip side of depression, anxiety, there's a different kind of lack of focus where it's a very high energy but scatteredness. And with depression, there's a very low energy kind of scatteredness. And with meditation, by learning to choose a thought or a body sensation, usually we work with body sensations because they're easier to deal with. By choosing a particular body sensation, and then when your mind wanders, which it will do, that's what minds do, they think thoughts. When your mind wanders, you very gently bring it back to whatever you've chosen. We often talk about the breath because everybody breathes, but you can use any sensation. That practice of being distracted, coming back, being distracted, coming back, trains focus and helps you regain focus that may be lost during a depressive or anxious episode. Meditation, I have kind of three tools. That's my thing. And the movement, the meditation, and then we'll talk about writing in a minute. But yeah, that's the thing. I think some people come to meditation because they want a spiritual experience or they want to escape from reality. They think that's what it's going to be. They want to zone out, or they think they're going to be calm all the time. Or they say they can't meditate because their minds are wandering. And the truth is that's just what minds do. Your mind is going to stop wandering when you die. I'm so sorry to say this, but this is the truth. It's going to keep doing its thing until you're dead. And so accepting that and doing it also in tiny little doses can help rebuild the calm and concentration that is often lost when you're in some kind of a mental health episode. Even if you can do it just a tiny bit, just like the movement, that really, really helps. Some people, they think, oh, I have to do it 30 minutes a day or I can't do it at all. No, you can do 5 minutes. Well, actually, you can meditate in a second. You just feel your feet. Just right now, feel your feet. There, you meditated. That's it. Check. Done for the day. It's really that simple.
Well, so a lot of very, very high performance people meditate, right? Like it is a practice that is highly correlated with successful individuals, however you want to say it. So I want to talk to you a lot more about meditation because I am a meditating failure, right? I've tried meditation, Insight Timer, and all those apps or whatever, I've tried it. It seems like I first tried to do meditation at a community college class in Anchorage, Alaska. In what year would this be? 92 or something like that, right? So that's 34 years ago. Tried meditation for the first time, and I have never been successful at it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But before we talk about meditation per se, mindfulness. You mentioned mindfulness, and at my kid's school, 10 years ago, they had this whole thing, right? They were talking about mindfulness. They would have parents come in and say oh, we want to have mindful children and we want to practice mindfulness. It's a word that you hear a lot. So they were talking about mindfulness at elementary school. They were not talking about meditation. What's the difference between mindfulness and meditation? Is there a link? Could you dive into that for us?
Yeah, so mindfulness is a term that gets tossed around a lot. And I don't know the history of the term in terms of whether it came from meditation first or it came from something else first. I don't know. It is the way that I practice it. It is a type of meditation, and it's often kind of a misnomer because when you think of mind, you think of thinking, and in mindfulness practice, it's not about thinking about things, it's about fully experiencing them in an embodied way. So you're actually in your body, because most of us spend most of our time up in our heads, which is not a bad thing. But we kind of live from here up, and we're not totally aware of what's going down here all the time. So in the mindfulness practice that I have studied and am certified in, we focus on especially the body sensations, because people think they can't meditate because they can't force their mind to focus. And what the difference is it's about allowing your mind to focus by choosing a very specific thing, and then very, sort of being, I'll use an example. Let's go with the feet again. So if right now I feel the bottoms of my feet, so I can feel the kind of, I happen to have on compression hose because I wear them when I'm sitting all day. I can feel the ribs in those compression hose. And so I might choose that as what we call our object of meditation. It's the thing we're going to focus on. So I choose that. And now I'm thinking about what's for lunch. And then I go, oh, Nita, you're supposed to be meditating. Let's go back to the ridges in those socks and the bottom of your feet. Okay, there we are. And then I might notice that at first the ridges feel like solid, and then now there's a little tingling sensation. And so I get curious about what's going on with the bottoms of my feet. And I notice that what felt solid actually is kind of moving. And then I'm thinking about the edits that I have to do this afternoon. And then I go, oh, wait, Nita, you're meditating. And I bring it back. And that's the practice. That is the mindfulness practice that I know. And the other piece of it is that you usually choose a time period, because if your mind thinks it has to do this for the rest of your life, there's no way it'll do it. So you pick, 5 minutes or 30 seconds or whatever you want to do, so that you're just doing that practice for that period of time. And you come back and back and back. And the returning is the most important part. That returning back again and again to whatever the thing is that you've chosen during the practice. So I know that I remember kind of the wave of mindfulness in schools, and it depends on the kids, it depends on the teacher, it depends on the school system also, whether it was supported. But there have been studies that when children especially are taught mindfulness practices of the kind that I just mentioned, where you choose something and you bring your mind back again and again, you don't judge the fact that you're suddenly thinking about lunch. No judgment. Oh, I forgot I was meditating. We come back again and again. So that combination of dropping the judgment, returning to focus, and the repetition of doing that will calm the nervous system and increase that focus, which is the thing that has probably been the biggest benefit to me.
Well, have you read that book called The Power of Now? Yeah. So I read that book, The Power of Now, I'm going to say 21, 22 years ago.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle, right?
Eckhart Tolle, yeah. And so it made quite an impression on me. And it is all about being present, right? Because the thing is that most people, they don't live in the present. They don't live in the now. They live in the past or the future, right? And so they're dragged down by all the events of their past, and they're always They're always wanting to be in the future where either something bad or good is going to happen, right? And they are not focused on the present moment, which is the only moment we can control. The past is now written in stone, can't be changed. Future has yet to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. But the only thing that we can actually control is what is actually going on right this second, and usually it's what's going on right here between your two ears. And so
and in your body though, ears, but also
too.
In your body. Yeah, that's the part we miss. What's going on in the body? But yes,
right,
continue. And Eckhart Tolle, he's amazing. Yeah,
Eckhart Tolle is amazing, and I should probably go back and get the audiobook and listen to it. I did actually read the actual book back in the day. And I kind of thought that's what they were going for when they were talking about like being mindful, right? Like, because for me, I'm no expert, I'm not even close. That I try to always focus on like the present because all these things creep in all the time, like a lot of it has to do with like anxiety about what's going to happen if I do X, Y, or Z? What's going to happen if I try to like start exercising or start to lose weight or start to change my diet and it doesn't work? And people are going to mock me. People are going to tell me I'm a failure that I've always been. Like, you can't do it, right? And so like, what if? And like that lack of maintaining the present moment, like the only thing I got to worry about right now is not eating that cheesecake, right? Only thing I have to worry about right now is actually like getting up and going for a walk around the block, if that's it, right? I mean, like, because that's the only thing you can control. Don't worry about the future. The future will take care of itself. And so that's what I've always kind of thought about is mindfulness, is basically just staying present and just being aware of like what is actually happening right now, what's going on right now, and how you can best, execute whatever you want to do, to get the result that you want in the future, right? Like, be the person today that you want to be tomorrow or next year or 10 years from now. And if that's the action that you're taking is consistent with that future that you want to have, don't worry about that future. Just do today what a person who has that would be doing right now. Okay, so for meditation, though, is this the game?
That is because, meditation. You're already meditating, Seb.
I'm already meditating. All right, I love it. So I've tried so many times.
You're already doing it.
Well, I've tried so many times. So here's the thing. It's like I have Insight Timer and like, I don't know, 3 or 4 different meditation apps I've tried. And so like,
there's some great
I sit
ones.
down and I maintain the posture and, I do my breathing and like, okay, so the breath is my area of concentration, which that's a very good one. I like it. It's rhythmic, right? So like it really helps. But like always like these other thoughts come in and then like I get taken away on these thoughts, and like when I first start I can come back, right? So like I can do it like 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times, 20 times, but eventually I just can't stop. Eventually a thought's going to come in and I just can't anymore like stay meditative. And I would say that I had like one really good meditation session where I can say I blanked out. Time passed and I can't tell you what was going on in that time. Like, was I asleep? I don't know. But like to me, like that was my peak meditative experience where
that's not meditation.
That's not meditation.
That's not meditation when you blank out.
Okay, great. Help me out here.
See, that's what people want. They want to zone out. They want to blank out. They want to for time to pass with that. Sometimes people they talk about being in the zone. There's a thing about being in the zone, and the difference between meditation and that is that with meditation, that if your mind wanders, let's say you're meditating for 5 minutes and your mind wanders for 4 minutes and 57 seconds of that meditation, but you still did it and you still had the intention to bring yourself back and you brought yourself back once, that's meditation. That's it. But we tend to be so goal oriented and also wanting relief from reality because reality became really tough, can be really awful, that we want that zone out. Meditation is the opposite of that. Instead of escaping from the world, it's escaping into it. So it's letting your mind wander and then going, oh, wait a minute, I was meditating, Sometimes too, if I have a thought, like let's say I'm working on a project and some thoughts will arise about the project, I'll just go ahead and jot them down. So I've got them, and then I can come back to the practice. I also don't try to meditate, unless I'm at a retreat, I don't try to meditate for never longer than probably 20 to 30 minutes ever. And even that can be too much for people because it just gets to be too much. But I think the expectation that we're going to get good at this and it's going to become this thing that, I mean, it is a skill set, and you will get better at it. But you never. There's no there to get to. Like with many other things. Like you said you're a realtor, either representing buyers or sellers, and there's at some point there's a closing, and you're done. You achieve your goal. There is no goal in meditation. The only goal is to practice meditation. And that's what people get confused. It's a very cultural thing in America to be driven by goal oriented. And there's nothing wrong with goals. I mean, I love goals. I love a good goal and love achieving goals. Lots of pleasant body sensations around that. But the problem that people have with it is that they get confused about why they're meditating. And it's or not even why, but what it really is. Because it's not about, some days you just sit down and you just can't focus, and that's just the way it is. And some days you totally zone out, and that's just the way it is. And some days you're completely present with what's actually happening in the moment. Does that help at all? Because I think it's confusing because our culture gets so mixed up. And then they use the word mindfulness for a lot of different things, whereas originally it kind of came from there's a Buddhist tradition called Theravada, which is one of the original Buddhist traditions, and that's kind of where it came from. Insight or mindfulness came out of that, and then it was Americanized when it was brought here by I think it was Joseph Goldstein and Jack Kornfield and Susan Salzberg and Jacqueline Mandel, and I forget the other. There were about 5 or 6 of them that all went to India, then they all brought it back, and so it's confusing, and I understand why. But we need, we can simplify it so that it actually works for us. But I think you're already meditating because the focus on staying in the moment, that's really what it is. And also, you probably, like when you're with, trying to think when it might be, maybe when you first walk into a house that you're going to list, there's a moment of intense concentration somewhere during your process. There's a moment of intense concentration when you're fully present, but you're completely aware of everything that's going on, and time may actually slow down there for you. Most people have it if they have a career or a sport or something that they're really, really engaged in. I'm guessing for you because I don't know exactly what your methodology is. But I bet that there's a moment when you are just absolutely on. You are completely present. Maybe when you're doing these podcasts, I don't know. And that's the energy, that's that same kind of energy that you can get in these little moments while you're meditating. And that builds.
All right. So you mentioned time for meditation, and you said, I'm meditating right now. It's like, I don't know. I'm not 100% there with that yet. What is the amount of time? Like, I mean, is it 5 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 15 minutes? I mean, you have some people like Sting meditates 3 or 4 hours a day, right? I mean, like, what is the optimal time, or like what's a good time or minimum time? What can you tell us about time meditation? You should do it every day, twice a day. Like, what kind of time commitments involved with being a productive meditator, I guess?
It's the one you'll do. It's irrelevant. It's the one you'll do. So if you only feel that you have the concentration and maybe life circumstances to do 1 minute of meditation, then go all in for 60 seconds. Go all in for 60 seconds and do your best to stay completely focused on whether it's your breath. It could be, a pain in your knee. It could be anything, whatever you got, it really doesn't matter. You can use, like sometimes when I run, I use the color green, especially in the spring, because we get, in Central Ohio, things get this vivid, bright green after a very dark gray and, white and black winter. And so for just a short period of time, I'll say, okay, all I'm going to do is pay attention to every shade and shape of the color green that I see. And then my mind will wander, and I'll just bring it back. Mind wander, bring it back. I think that there probably is some science around 30 minutes or 20 minutes, because those are what, if you go to, for example, a retreat or you sit with a teacher, those tend to be the periods of time that they recommend that you do. And consistency is important because you are building a skill set. Even though there's no goal, you are building calm and concentration, and those are skills that they're kind of like muscles, the way you would build muscles if you lifted weights, or the way you build muscles if you run or walk long distances. So consistency is important. But if you're the kind of person who says, I'm going to do this every day, and then after 3 days you miss a day, you're not going to do it anymore, then stop with the everyday business. Just bring yourself back. Because when I say bring yourself back, I'm talking about bringing your awareness back to whatever you're chosen, but I'm also talking about the fact that we have lives, and you miss a day and you bring yourself back to Thursday after you missed Wednesday, or you miss a year and you bring yourself back to 2026 after you missed 2025. It's a big picture bringing yourself back, in addition to that kind of micro, so both micro and macro. But I think there's so much, there's a lot of self-judgment too, of, oh, I'm just not good at this. Oh, I can't do this. And we don't want to do things we're not good at. We just don't. We don't. At least I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
I think you're talking about me right now.
Oh, sorry. Well, not really, actually, but not totally apologizing. But yeah, that's what it is. And so noticing that about yourself and saying, okay, can I let myself be bad at this? Can I just let myself not be good at this? And I don't have to spend a lot of time at it, but get curious to see what happens if you change the way you think about it and you choose to kind of relax the intensity around it. I mean, we are just intense people. I can just tell. You and I are both pretty intense people. And so we have to push back on that a little bit. We lean into it where it serves us. But sometimes we have to open up around that a little bit and let life be a little bit easier, a little bit less driven. And we do what we can, That's what we do. We do our best.
Right, we do our best, and no judgment. And also, I think you mentioned the magic word, which is consistency, right? I mean, like, this is, I think, the key to success in anything, right? Yeah, I love that Blues Traveler lyric, right? There's no such thing as a failure who keeps trying, right? So just just keep on doing it, like whatever it is, right? I mean, like that's what separates the winners and losers from life, I think, in so many ways, are those people who just keep on doing it, who keep on putting the work in. And it doesn't even have to be that much work. It's just that you keep on chipping away at it. And I have given up on meditation. I'm sure I will go back into it, because every time I talk to somebody like you, I'm going like, man, like I really need to get back on the horse because you're missing out. Well, but I looked, I mean, the high performance in life, right? I mean, like so many of them, like the evidence is clear. And then you like listen to like podcasts, like 10% Happier with Dan Harris, right? Which is like, I don't know if you listen to that podcast, love it. He talks about a lot of those founders of meditation in the United States and the history and all that. That's very interesting to me, right? And I know that this is so important. And one thing though, that I think when people are getting into meditation, there's like guided and unguided meditation. And so like the guided meditation to me, it always seems so weird because like I'm listening to somebody talk and he's like telling me stuff, he or she is telling me stuff. And like, I don't feel like I'm really meditating. I feel like I'm listening to like an audiobook or something like that. Right. I mean, so break it down. Is guided or unguided, is one better than the other? And how can you really be meditating if you're like actively, consciously listening to somebody talk the whole time?
So if they're talking the whole time, the way to meditate is to listen to the tone and the pitch, the pace of their voice, and notice where you feel that in your body. Because if they're talking all the time, there's not space for you to do kind of your own practice. So you have to make it you have to make it your own practice, because you can do that with any kind of sound. You can do it with birds, you can do it with noise, you can do it with my voice right now, because usually when we hear something, there is a resonance in our body somewhere. So if they're talking all the time, you can take in the information and also meditate, using your own, like noticing also your thoughts. Are you thinking, oh, this is really great? Or are you thinking, I don't think I can do that? Or are you thinking, this person's full of it? Or, I mean, what are the noticing, like what's happening in your mind as you're listening? That's another way you can do it. So there's lots of ways to meditate. Ideally, the guided meditation is to teach you a technique which you can do whether you have the teacher there or not. So especially a body scan is a really good example of a place where guided meditation is often more effective than trying to do a body scan on your own. Do you know what a body scan is? That's where you maybe start. Okay, so with a body scan, you start with you start either with your head or your toes, and you scan very slowly every part of your body to notice what's there, what's happening. Is it tense? Is it relaxed? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is there any kind of pain, or is it pleasant? Is it, is there, what's happening? So you literally will start with your toes and gradually work your way up through your body. And I find that when I try to do a body scan on my own, I get very distracted because I lose track of which body part I'm on, and it's hard for me. But when I do a body scan where there's a teacher, a guided body scan, where there's a teacher that's telling me when to move from my toe to my ankle, to my shin, to my knee, very slowly they do it. I can actually follow along, and I can be meditating by focusing my awareness on what's happening on that body part at that time. So that's one example. I mean, there's a million examples of guided meditation. There are guided meditations where the teacher will talk for 3 minutes at the beginning of the meditation. Let's say it's a half an hour meditation. The teacher will talk for 3 minutes at the beginning of meditation. 15 minutes in, they'll remind you that you're supposed to be meditating. They won't say it that way, but they'll basically say, if your mind has wandered, please gently bring it back to your chosen body sensation. And then it will be quiet for another 12 minutes. And then at the end, the teacher will say, thank you for joining me today. See you again tomorrow. Something like that. That is also a guided meditation, but there's lots of space in it. So different teachers do different things. A lot of what I hear on some of these apps described as guided meditation is actually much more like a lecture. And again, you can meditate during a lecture. If you're at a retreat, the teacher will often suggest that when, most of the retreat will be in silence, but in the evening they give what's called a Dharma talk, or it's a little lecture. And they will suggest that you meditate during the talk. So you may even sit there and listen with your eyes closed and notice any thoughts and body sensations that are happening while you're listening to them, share a technique or a story or something, that's they feel is important for you to know during the retreat, because you can literally meditate anywhere. One of my favorite sneaky meditations is standing in line at a store, especially if I'm in the 10 items or less line and the person ahead of me has 11 items. And so I notice boredom. What is boredom? Where do I feel bored in my body? What happens in my head when I'm bored? I notice frustration or irritation, judgment, because I can be very judgmental. I notice that I'm being judgmental. Where do I feel judgment in my body? I get curious about it. And I can, let it kind of, you can literally meditate anywhere doing literally anything. I got books about that. I wrote a book about it. So we can talk more about
so
that.
You mentioned apps, and I mentioned 10% Happier. Are there apps or podcasts or anything like that you recommend to people, especially older adults, to help them explore meditation? Anything you recommend?
Well, Insight Timer is probably the most robust because I think they have the most teachers, and I have found certain teachers that I like. It's such an individual thing that you need to sort of sample a few to find them. And I every once in a while I will follow Sharon Salzberg and do a metta practice, which is completely different. It's more of what they call mantra, where you're repeating phrases and trying to generate a particular emotion. Metta is love and kindness. And so you start by generating loving kindness for someone you absolutely already love, or it could be a pet. So some being that you unconditionally love. So sometimes you start with a pet, because even though I absolutely love my spouse, there are times when he annoys me and I annoy him. So I start with my pet. And then you work your way from some being that you unconditionally love to someone that you have unpleasant thoughts about. It's the idea is that you can generate love and kindness even for people with whom you vehemently disagree. Sometimes I have a challenge with that, and so that's one of the ones that I'll go back to from time to time. But there's a guy named Darren Larson who's also a meditation teacher that I really enjoy, and he's on Insight Timer, but I think he's on a number of other ones too. But I don't think there's a bad one. It's just finding teachers that you can tolerate their voice. My husband absolutely loves Sam Harris. I know a lot of people who really, he has a daily app that he provides, and for whatever reason, his voice just to me sounds like nails on a chalkboard. It just has a thing, and the content. If I can read his content, it's really good. What he's saying, I really I find very helpful. So you have to find somebody that you can receive what they're giving, whether it's the way they look or their tone of voice or whatever. You have to find a teacher that you can learn from, and there can be lots of reasons, and I don't care what they are. It's just about finding someone that you really can learn from. So yeah, I'm not going to say, Insight Timer is the one I'm the most familiar with, and that's the one that most of the people I know are on that, but there's lots of other ones that are also really good.
It's the champ, and I've used 3 or 4, and Insight Timer is the best, and they have like a yearly subscription. It's like $125. I mean, it's not free, but I mean, like there is a tremendous amount of content in there, and there's a free version too. Yeah. So
there's all kinds of things. So it's just robust. That's what I tell people. Yeah.
All kinds of things, and I want to talk about retreats, but I don't want to scare people off because they're like, oh, I gotta join an ashram or whatever, I think that might be maybe a step too far for our little introductory conversation right here.
Well, and that's not what I do either. I'm not Hindu, so ashram's more of a yoga kind of thing. Seriously, it's a little different because we're not worshiping anybody, and that's more of a yogi guru kind of thing, whereas the meditation teachers in the tradition I follow, they don't want you to worship them. Thank you very much. Do not put us on a pedestal. So it's a little different energy. But yeah, retreats, we'll talk about that another time. But they're there if you're curious. If they're curious, it is there for you if you want extended periods of silence and instruction and guidance, and also a community. The retreats can help with that, but no, we just got to get you meditating first.
Well, I mean,
5 minutes.
I live in Santa Cruz County, California, right? I mean, like there's multiple like Buddhist monasteries around here. I mean, like there's like probably a retreat every weekend if I were to find one, and maybe I should do that. I think it would really be great. But I want to talk a little bit about the writing, if you don't mind, and so like. Specifically about journaling, right? Because all the times you hear about okay, meditation, and then another one of your like daily practices should be journaling, and like I hear this time and time again, like a gratitude journal. So does like journaling and like feeling grateful and like having an attitude of gratitude, how does that tie into like fighting depression, being happier, and meditation? Can you like touch on that at all?
When I am in my darkest place, gratitude is impossible. And so what I start with is complaining. And I will just basically write everything that's wrong. And then that will get old. And then gradually it will turn into something more neutral. Because we tend to try to change what's actually going on, and sometimes that can be helpful. So I've made gratitude lists. I completely believe that gratitude is a very, very important tool, really. It really is a kind of an action, actually. And there are times when people get so low that they cannot access that, and it actually has the opposite effect because they end up either being pissed off that somebody's suggesting they be grateful when it really feels like life has taken a horrible turn for them, or they just can't access it and can't imagine ever feeling grateful again, and maybe shame themselves about the fact that they can't. And so I prefer to start with what is. And so sometimes what is simply noticing objects around me or the sensory details of what is happening. I don't call what I do journaling, but you could call it journaling. I mean, that's kind of a huge umbrella term. I learned the kind of writing that I do, the meditative writing I do from a teacher named Natalie Goldberg. Her most famous book is called Writing Down the Bones. She's actually written, I think, 16 books, but that's the one that's been translated into all the different languages and has sold, millions of copies. And she teaches writing as a practice, and she calls it writing practice. And the way I learned it was that you sit for a few minutes to kind of still the body and the mind, and then you pick a topic, and it's usually something like I remember, or mashed potatoes, or a haircut. They're kind of generic, but it's not like love or peace. So they're not vague. They have some specificity to them. And then you set a timer the same way you might with meditation. And then you keep your hand moving. You get your hand moving and you keep your hand moving. You don't stop. You don't cross out. If you have a word that you don't want, you think, oh, I've written the wrong word, you just circle it. Because the mind, when you cross out it, the mind stops, but a circle, the mind will keep going. There's a whole practice. I actually teach courses on this. And then, ideally, you do it with another person so that then you read it aloud after the 10 minutes. You read aloud with no comment, so you get no feedback. So it's reading, it's sitting, reading, and writing. And then we also usually do some slow walking while we do it. And again, that's the ideal situation. But if I do it by myself, then I might do some slow walking here in my office or just up and down the hallway. People don't even have to realize you're meditating or doing, walking meditation. Just keep your head kind of right where your body is while you're walking, and then come back and sit down and just write for 10 minutes so that it's not like I'm going anywhere with it. It's sort of pre-writing. She actually calls it that, a priori, pre-writing. So it's emptying the mind of the, detritus that builds up over time. Sometimes I'll work out a problem that I'm having. I'll be, figure something out by writing about it. Sometimes I'll write poetry. I don't even know. But there's no agenda with the type of writing I do. And it's a little different from journaling because I talked about the complaining that I might start with if I'm in a really dark place. And with journaling, I could journal and just complain forever. But with writing practice, you grab sensory details. So if I'm journaling, if I'm writing, I don't want to give journaling a bad reputation because it's actually a really powerful tool. But the little bit of a difference is if I find myself complaining, I'll say something like, I'll write actually something like, what I really want to say is, or that's not what's really going on, or there's a squirrel outside my window, and I'll start describing the squirrel. I'll get myself out of that darkness by being in the present moment. So that's what makes it more like a meditative practice, because it's about capturing sensory details and capturing thoughts as they arise, and noticing if I'm ruminating about something, noticing that and stepping back from it and going, that's not what I really want to write about today. What I really want to write about is the color of the sky, which right now, looks like it's a steel gray. Or I might say, what I really want to write about is the way I felt when my husband proposed, or something. It's like I bring myself back to something that has more power, capturing the power of emotion. And for me, that makes it, like, you can go there in journaling. You absolutely can go there in journaling, but when you have a little more intention around it, it gets more clear. Things feel more clear. And it's the kind of thing that it's really hard to describe. You have to, it's meditation is kind of like that too. You sort of have, maybe running's like that too, actually. Maybe everything's like that, where you actually have to do it to understand it. You have to really, to experience it.
Right, right. Well, you are a prolific writer, looks like. I mean, you have, let's see here, I'm on your website. You have 4 books right here: A Daily Dose of Now, which this sounds really great. 365 mindfulness meditation practices for living in the moment, living in the now. I'm all about that. Make every move a meditation. And then you have the free ebook, which I'm going to go download this: 3 tools for a happier, healthier mind. That looks great. And then you have your award-winning memoir, Depression Hates a Moving Target. And so that one sounds like a winner as well, because I really believe that movement is really key to, like, just health and longevity and, quality of life. Like, the body wants to move. And I think that people who
It
don't
does.
move are much more likely to suffer from depression. And now you're working on a new book, is that right?
Yes, yes. The first book, Depression Hates a Moving Target, is a memoir. It has some how-to things about running in the back, but really it's my running memoir. It's about how I started down in that hidden ravine with my dog, and what happened after, why that started and what happened after. And so I went back to my roots of memoir for this one. And my next book, which comes out in June, is called Memorial: The Year My Dad and I Stopped Keeping Score. And I had had a major depressive episode in 1994, and I was healing from that. It was about 4 months, I think, after I had been hospitalized for suicidal ideation that almost killed me. And he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so he had been was an avid golfer, had placed in a championship tournament, and he just wanted to play golf. They came home from Arizona, and so while I was off work, because I had been an attorney and was busy working, he and I played golf all summer until he couldn't, and then my mother and he and I traveled for a while, and then he lived with my husband and I until he died. And so it's a journey of healing our relationship, and me healing myself, healing with him as his health was declining. And it was, it's been a long project. This was actually my first book length project in 2005. 2004, I think, maybe. I forget how long it's been. Almost 22 years I've been working on this book, on and off, on and off. This was the one I couldn't finish before I started running. And then I ended up doing the other books, because sometimes that's what happens when you get a traditional publisher. They want you to, go a little bit of a different path. So that's what we did. But yeah, I'm really excited about this one. Yeah, it's personal, but it's a much bigger story than just him and I playing golf. It's more about mental health, mental illness, recovery, the choices, lots of end of life choices, material in that, and father-daughter relationships, family dynamics, and some dogs. There's always dogs and everything, all right? There's always dogs.
All right. Well, we'll have to keep an eye open for that one. So, Nita, we're kind of running out of time here, but before we wrap it up, is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you, or any parting words you want to share with our listeners?
Well, the thing I always like to say is, if you are struggling, please stay. Please just stay, because things will change and help is available, and it will get different. It really will get different. I've been through lots of ups and downs. So, yeah, just please stay.
All right. And if people want to get hold of you to talk about what's going on in their lives, or anything that you think that you might be able to help them with, what's the best way to reach you?
There's a services tab on my website. So it's nitasweeney.com. It's just my name. I'm sure you'll probably have that in the show notes. And there's a services tab there that that will lead you to a place to schedule. You can have a free complimentary, I call it a curiosity call, 20 minutes of us just chatting to see if we're a good fit. And yeah, and that would be fantastic.
All right, terrific. Nita, thank you so much. We went overtime here, and because I really got so much out of this conversation, and love to have you back on the show sometime to talk more about meditation and retreats, because I just think that, again, I mean, I just see it time and time again, like meditation is such an important, vital tool that we can all use to like lead better lives. So thank you so much for sharing, a bit of your story and your successes with us here on 60 Plus Uncensored.
Well, thanks for letting me share about all that. And thanks for the work you do, because it's so important to have, different people's perspectives. Everybody's different. And I love that you bring different people on with, different perspectives. That's great.
Variety is the spice of life. All right. Thank you so much, Nita. And we will catch you on the flip side. All right, that's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Nita Sweeney for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you like this episode, do me a favor, do Nita a favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and by the way, if you know someone over 60 who's still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with purpose, or aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation at 60 Plus Living on Facebook. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored. Because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.